difference between Russian people and American people? Is there a difference? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi guys, I'm Chris Americos here with another video for you. If you don't know who I am, let me tell you a little bit about myself first. In 2009, I went to Russia for the first time in my life. I really liked it and I needed to find a job. I became a teacher of English as a foreign language at a local language center. I worked there for a year and a half, and then I opened my own business. To this day, my business is still functioning in Russia. So, once or twice every year, I need to go back to Russia and check on everything. But for the most part, I work online. When I'm in America, I speak Russian and English. When I'm in Russia, I speak English and Russian. And it's really provided me with an inside look as to why people act differently and what they do differently. I know there's a lot of videos on YouTube that touch on this topic, but I hope to give you a deeper, more objective view of these differences and why they exist. I don't know about you, but if you're like me, you looked on YouTube and you found a lot of different videos where people say, you know, this thing sucks in America or this thing is stupid in Russia, and people complain a lot. This video is not going to be a complaining video. This video is going to be an insightful video. And there's actually a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing we need to understand are the two concepts of idealism and realism. When we're comparing Russian people and American people, these two concepts become very important because it's a different outlook on life. In fact, this first part of the video is going to be about differences in mentality. And idealism versus realism is a big part of that. So in case you don't know, idealism is where you think that everything should be like an ideal. So you believe in some kind of utopian society or some structure of society that should be perfect. And you operate under the assumption that things should work this way in this society. This is idealism, where we believe that there's something perfect and we believe that our real world can reach those perfect standards. The opposite, realism, would be where people understand that nothing is perfect, where people take the real thing as it is, maybe it's broken, maybe it doesn't work, and they accept it as it is, and they work with it as it is. They don't really try to work so hard to get to an ideal situation because there is no ideal. And these two concepts really explain a big difference in mentality between American people and Russian people. We can see in a lot of situations that American people are more idealistic, and Russian people are more realistic. And I'd even go so far as to say that American people, when they travel abroad, really show their idealism. A lot of people believe and vocalize the fact that they think everywhere in the world people should do things the same as the United States. They think that's what's right. And I'm not saying that that's completely wrong. There's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that a little later in this video. But both idealism and realism can be bad. For example, someone who is too realistic, we often call cynical. This person doesn't allow anything idealistic or even close to being idealistic happen. They don't accept that these ideas can exist because they understand that the world works by specific rules that don't allow perfection to happen. So someone might tell you, yeah, it should work like this, but this is how it really works. This is a very realistic thing to say. The problem with realism is that it keeps our standards low, and it doesn't push us to follow higher standards or higher principles. The problem with idealism is that many people try to apply the rules that should equal a perfect society to other societies that don't have the same rules. So although an entire society might be working under one rule set to reach a certain goal or something similar to a utopia, those rules don't apply outside of that society. And not only that, but we know that those ideals, those rules, are meant to be perfect and nothing is really perfect. So we're always going to be disappointed in an idealistic society. So let's compare. According to American idealism, there are a certain set of rules and a certain way of doing things that should equal success or should equal a good result. You've probably heard before, if you work hard, you can do anything. Or if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. These phrases really express this American idealism. I'd even say that this idealism extends into individualism, where we believe that every individual can be anything. And sure, that sounds great. Why not let everyone do anything that they want and become whatever they want? But in the real world, we understand that that can't happen. We need people to become doctors. We need people to become garbage men. We need a person to be the president. Not everyone will be able to do this. On the other hand, Russian realism is very limiting. It keeps expectations low, and it allows people to operate only under the rules that have worked recently. It's also difficult because when the reality changes, life changes. And these abstract ideals don't exist, or at least not on the level that they exist in Western countries. Alright, enough about that. The next thing that we need to talk about is gender roles. Russia has more traditional gender roles than the United States. In fact, in the United States, most people don't even understand what it means to have a gender role. People have been told for such a long time that everyone is equal, which brings us back to the idea of idealism in society. While we know that not everyone could be equal, not financially, not physically, not mentally, we tend to think in the United States that equality means in the eyes of the law. So every person has a fair chance to do something legally. In fact, when they see a person walking down the street, American people don't usually think it's a woman or it's a man. They usually think it's a person. This is much different from societies that have traditional gender roles. In traditional gender roles, the man's work or duties and the woman's work or duties are very clearly defined. In today's Western world, we don't have these strong gender roles, so these roles are not clearly defined. This means that they're blurred and mixed up a little bit, and it can be difficult for someone to understand what exactly a woman's role is and what exactly a man's role is. Instead, we just think about what an individual should do. But in traditional gender role societies, we can see standard ideas that people believe and people carry down throughout generations. We've all heard the idea that women cook and clean and take care of the house. In the West, these words are rather taboo today. And is that good or is that bad? It's not for me to say. But in traditional gender role societies, this is taken as a fact, something that people believe and follow. And this carries over into social interactions. Let's imagine that there's a discussion about war, and we ask one of our group mates' opinions, a woman. In a non-traditional gender role society, this will be perfectly fine, and everyone will wait to hear what this woman has to say about this topic. But in a traditional gender role society, maybe one of the men will say she doesn't know about this topic because she's a woman. Or maybe she herself will say, I don't know anything about this topic, I'm a woman. So, in traditional gender role societies, being a man or being a woman automatically means that you do specific actions, you know about specific information, and maybe you enjoy specific activities. In non-traditional gender role societies, any person is able to do anything, or so we think. And this again brings us back to idealism. But as we saw, when we compared idealism and realism, non-traditional and traditional gender role societies also have their pluses and minuses. While in non-traditional gender role societies, any individual can do the tasks or duties that previously were assigned to men or to women, this can be a plus because, again, it takes away some of those limitations. What happens with a single mother family or single father family? Of course, this person will have to compensate and take on some roles of the other gender. And as these situations become more and more frequent, maybe this is a very good transition. However, there's also a very positive side to traditional gender role societies. In traditional gender role societies, everyone knows what to expect. They know that when they meet a woman, the woman believes that these are her roles and duties. And when they meet a man, these are his roles and duties. For example, if I asked you, who in a relationship should be decisive? People who grew up in a non-traditional gender role society like the United States will probably answer, both people should be decisive, or both people should be able to make decisions. But if I ask someone in a traditional gender role society like Russia, the majority of people I ask will say that the man should be decisive because it's the man's role to make decisions. This might not seem so important right now, but when you're in these societies, you can feel the difference in mentality that people have about these topics. They themselves don't think about it. They might not be conscious of it, but life works like this in this society. And speaking about gender roles, where are people able to express themselves more freely? In a non-traditional gender role society or in a traditional gender role society? Write your answers down below this video and let me know what you think. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit about traditions surrounding hospitality. What do you do to prepare for your friends coming over to your house? Maybe you don't do anything. You think that they should accept you how you are and you should accept them how they are, and you shouldn't have to try to hold a friendship together. On the other hand, maybe you believe that when a person comes to your house, he should provide something. He should at least be fun. Or maybe you believe that when people come to your house, you should entertain them, and you should provide them with food and drinks. There are a lot of different ideas about these things, but we can break down the difference between American and Russian people about this topic very clearly. I'd say that in the United States, the focus is on being a good guest. That means a person invited you somewhere, they gave you an invitation. Maybe they provided you with a place for you to relax, hang out, and have a good time. And in exchange for this, you provide a great atmosphere, lots of fun, maybe some drinks, maybe some food. The invitation was enough, and now you should show that you're a good guest. You shouldn't ask for a lot of things. You should just take what's given, and if you don't like the party, you should leave. But in Russia, the focus is completely different. In Russia, the focus is on being a good host. When people come to your house, you should entertain them. You should do everything that you can to make their time with you great. This is what it means to be a good host. So usually when you go to someone's house, they'll offer you food, drinks, and they'll want to play some kind of game or have an interesting conversation. And this is really a big difference between American people and Russian people in terms of hospitality. Sure, we know that in both countries there are lots of different types of people with lots of different traditions. But right now we're talking about the majority of people. This brings to mind another situation that's related to gender roles and related to hospitality. In Russia, it's very often that someone will offer you a lot of food, probably more than you can eat. Or maybe they'll offer you more drinks than you can drink, if that's possible. And of course, like a good, polite Westerner, you'll probably say, no thank you. But this won't work, because they will keep offering it and keep offering it to you until you say yes. And it reminds me of a saying, that in Russia, yes means yes, 100%. But no means maybe. In the United States, no means no, 100%. But yes means maybe. Now, okay, you might be a little confused. This is all to say that in Russia, when someone agrees to do something or says, yes, I will do it, that means that he will do it, absolutely. Whereas in the United States, if someone says yes, they might change their mind later. In Russia, changing your mind is seen as a weakness. And as we talked about with gender roles, men don't do this because men should be decisive. On the other hand, however, if we say no in the United States, people usually get the idea that I shouldn't ask again. He already said no. Like he made up his mind. But in Russia, when someone says no, people usually ask again and again, just to make sure that he really didn't want that thing, that he really wanted to say no. So this might come off as rude to an American person. But really, we need to think about this as being very polite. This is a type of hospitality, where we're going to ask the guest many times if he wants this or if he wants something else, so that he can feel comfortable and understand that we are good hosts. Whereas the American person in this situation is operating under a different assumption. He thinks that he needs to be a good guest. And because he needs to be a good guest, he needs to say no when things are offered to him, because he doesn't want to take from the host. He doesn't want to ask the host for more things. For example, if he wants more to eat or more to drink, he shouldn't ask. It's not polite in the West. But in Russia, it's 100% okay. It's even better because he's being truthful. But really, we could talk about this stuff forever. So let's go to the fourth and final point that I want to talk about concerning mentality. And this point is friendship. Friendship in America and in Russia are very different. And again, I can't tell you where it's better or worse. I'm just going to tell you how it's different. The term friend in English is very loose compared to the term friend in Russian. In the United States, we might meet someone in the same day, call them our friend. Anyways, imagine the situation. One of your really good old friends invites you to a party, and you want to bring a new person who you just met today. You'll tell the organizer of the party, "Hey, I'm with my friend. Can I come with my friend?" Even though you've only met him today. It would sound strange if you said, "Can I come with my acquaintance?" or "Can I come with this guy I just met today?" Instead, we say friend to talk about a person we have a positive relationship with or good feelings towards. In the United States, we also tend to think of a friend as a person who agrees with me, a person who supports me in what I do. We'll see how this is a little bit different from the Russian concept of friend. In Russia, a friend is a person who you've known for a long time. This person helps you. This person also supports you. But maybe this person doesn't agree with you on everything. Because, anyways, he's a different person and he has his own point of view. So the first difference we can see here is the time span. In Russia, a friend is developed over a long period of time. Whereas in the United States, someone who we call a friend, we might have only known for a few days or maybe a month. Sure, we have other terms that we use in English like close friend or best friend, but there are a lot of gradations of the concept friend in English, which makes the concept of friend in English weaker, because it can apply to many people. Whereas the concept of friend in Russian is much stronger, because it only applies to a select few people. There's also an expectation that your friend should help you. And this expectation is much stronger in Russia. If you call a person your friend, and he doesn't help you when you need help, he's not your friend. It's that simple. But in the United States, we don't really think of it like that. We think that a friend is a person who can help me and support me, but also, this person is just someone I like being around. If I like spending time with this person, then I can call this person my friend. That's a big difference. I always get a kick out of this situation when I explain it to different people, Russian and American people, because they don't understand how the situation could be any different. They both think that the result should be exactly how they believe it should be. But when I mix them together and they talk about it with each other, they find out that they have completely different viewpoints. Okay, so let's imagine the situation. You need to fly to another city, and you need someone to drive you to the airport. You ask your friend to drive you to the airport, and of course your friend agrees. Now, what are the conditions under which your friend agrees to help you? Well, in the United States, I would say that my friend drives me to the airport, and I, as a good friend, want to give him $5, $10, some money for gas because I don't want him to use his money and his resources on me. He's already using his time on me. So I think that I need to be a good friend by giving him money. Of course, he might ask me for money or he might not. He might take my money when I offer it, or he might not. This is not important. The important part is that I'm being a good friend by offering this, because I understand exchange. However, in Russia, the idea of exchange is removed from friendship more or less. A friend should help you and not expect anything for that. And you don't need to give your friend anything for being a friend. In Russia, if he's your friend, he just helps you when you need help. And you help him when he needs help. And nobody counts who helped more or who helped less, who bought what on this day and who bought what the next day. A friend is a friend. So, for Russian people, it's very strange to hear that you might give your friend money for helping you. And for American people, it might sound strange that in Russia, you don't compensate your friend for helping you. Either way, friendship and the general mentality of people in society is very, very different in Russia and in America. Alright, so that's the first part of this video, but don't turn it off yet. Make sure you stick around and listen to what's next. So the next thing that we need to talk about the differences between Russia and America are some ideas or concepts that people just understand differently. This is also about mentality of people. The first idea is the American concept of being respectful. We think that we need to respect everyone, and respecting people means something different in the United States. Being respectful means that you need to be polite to people. It also means that you don't offend other people. This means that you might change your behavior to be respectful towards someone. You might even say things that you normally wouldn't say, or you might agree to things that you wouldn't agree to. Just imagine if you're at somebody's house and they give you some food and you eat it and they say, "How was the food?" If you say, "It wasn't that good," then they will feel that this is disrespectful. And this is the perfect situation that illustrates the difference between Russia and America about being respectful. In Russia, being respectful is using respectful words and generally being polite. But being respectful does not mean that you say things that you don't really believe. And it doesn't mean that you try to say things that aren't true in order not to offend people. you can still speak your opinion. And that's why the American concept of respectful sometimes comes across to Russian people as being insincere. How can I know that you really mean what you're saying if you're just trying to be polite and respectful all the time? Phrases like, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but," or, "If it isn't too much trouble, would you be able to?" These long, indirect phrases in the English language allow us to be respectful and polite. But in Russian, they sound like a big game where I'm trying to hide what I really want to say. So, is it respectful or is it insincere? It depends on your mentality. The next difference is about the idea of being decisive or direct. We already talked about being decisive a little bit when it concerns gender roles. But now let's look at it in a different way. In Russia, people try to be very decisive and very direct because they don't want to waste other people's time. If I'm waiting in line and the person in front of me says, I don't know what I want. What is good here? What do you think? Then the people behind him have to wait. He's wasting other people's time. So, by being direct, things happen more quickly. By being decisive, we have a decision and we can move forward. And that's why a lot of people in Russia will push other people to make decisions faster or to move forward faster. Also, saying things directly means that there's no BS. There's no fake emotion. You say what you want to say, you show how you feel, and if the other person doesn't understand that or doesn't like that, that's his problem. But I'm sure you can see how this might be problematic in the United States. So instead of being decisive or direct in the United States, people usually feel like this is being controlling or bossy. People usually feel that this is unnecessary to do. You don't need to be so direct. You need to be more polite. You need to be more respectful. But that's because in our mentality, we believe that respectful is one type of action, whereas in Russia, respectful is another type of action. In the United States, respectful means allowing other people to say and do things that we might consider very stupid or unuseful. Whereas in Russia, we're going to directly address this situation and handle it. Let's look at another concept that's a little different between Russia and America. The concept of silly. Now, I love to be silly, and being silly is a lot of fun. But unfortunately, there isn't a good translation for this word to Russian, because all of the translations translate to something related to being stupid or dumb. And actually, that's kind of the general understanding in Russia, is that being silly is like being stupid or dumb. And actually, being silly can get you into bad situations. So let's go back and review what we just talked about. Being insincere is bad. That means when we're too respectful and we don't say what we really mean, it's bad in Russia. Being direct is good. So saying what we really think immediately and straightforward is good in Russia. That means that, of course, being silly is not good in Russia. Because when you're being silly, you're not being direct, you're not saying what you really think, and you're doing something that you don't really believe in, just for fun. Here's a challenge to any of the Russian people who are watching this video. Find a good translation for the phrase silly face, or to make a silly face. But your translation cannot use any words that are connected to being stupid or dumb. For example, glupый, тупой, дурной, and etc. Because being silly and making a silly face is not about being stupid. It's about having fun. Okay, the last comparison we're going to do here is the concept of being appropriately dressed in Russia, which is also the idea of being well dressed in the United States. So you've probably noticed, or you've probably seen somewhere, that people who go to the supermarket or the mall in the United States, they don't necessarily dress up for this activity. It's just an activity that is an everyday activity that people don't really think is special. So for a lot of European people and Russian people, it looks really strange when American people go to the mall, to the supermarket, anywhere outside their house, wearing sweat clothes, or wearing home clothes, pajamas and sweatpants and other things like that. For American people, the goal is to dress comfortably and to feel comfortable. But in most other countries, including Russia, people dress up a lot anytime they leave their house. So when I leave my house, I need to make a good impression on other people. Who knows who I might meet there? I'd say that this difference is also a big difference between country and city. But for example, if we see a man wearing a suit at the supermarket, we might think, wow, he's really dressed up. But in Russia, if we see a man wearing a suit at the supermarket, we think, just another guy. There's lots of guys in suits here. Likewise, if we see a young woman wearing sweatpants at the supermarket, we might not think anything in the United States. Just think, she's comfortable, and that's all. And there's lots of other people who wear sweatpants to the supermarket too. But in Russia, if someone wears sweatpants to the supermarket, it'll look very strange, and people might think that person is not dressed appropriately. So in general, we can say that being well-dressed in America is like being appropriately dressed in Russia. Alright, the last two parts of this video are going to talk about bigger ideas that show big differences between American and Russian people. But the first one that we're going to talk about is things that both of these cultures miss. Things that everybody is wrong about. And maybe wrong isn't the right word, just people think of things differently. So in every country, there's some information that people think is basic information, like common sense. At school, you learn some facts that really aren't important to life, but everybody learns the same facts. And later in life, everyone believes that that thing is true and that everyone in the world agrees on it. But in actuality, people in other countries learn different sets of facts and rules, and they think that those facts are true for everyone. And more often than not, those facts are different in different countries. Let's take the example of geography. There's a lot of videos on the internet about how people in America don't know geography. And there's actually a lot of situations like this in Russia too. The thing is that people usually know geography near where they are, and people don't know geography of places that are far away. So if I ask an American person what the capital of Kazakhstan is, he probably won't know. But if I ask a person in Russia what the capital of Kazakhstan is, it's more likely that he will know. The same idea that if I ask someone where Belize is, a lot of American people would know, but probably a lot of Russian people wouldn't know. Another thing that people often say about geography is that American people don't even know their own country. Well, we can say the same about Russia. A lot of people don't remember what they learned in school. At school, they learn about every oblast, or every state. They need to know the capital, they need to know what it produces, and in the United States, we do the same. We learn about each state, the capital, different information about that state. But after school, a lot of people forget this. This doesn't mean that these people are stupid because they don't know the facts that you know, or because they forgot information that they learned at school. This just means that they're like everyone else. They're a normal person. This idea about focusing on specific facts that are important to your culture and not on facts that are important to other cultures, and then applying your facts to every culture, this mistake can be seen in every country. And it also applies to healthcare. Many countries have special superstitions or wives' tales about how things work, how to avoid getting sick, how to be healthier, how to be stronger, and a lot of other things. And these are very different in different countries. In Russia, in the winter, everyone needs to change the tires on their cars so that they can drive on the icy roads. They call these winter tires. But in most parts of the United States, it only snows for about a month or less, and the streets are only icy for a few weeks. So most people don't change the tires on their cars. Now, for a person who spent all of their life in Russia, it might seem very strange that someone doesn't know what a winter tire is or doesn't know how they should be used. But at the same time, in the United States, it doesn't make sense to talk about winter tires because there isn't a serious winter like in Russia. So these are just some more examples of how in one country there are standard things that everyone thinks that you should know, and in another country those things are very different. And this doesn't show us that one person is smarter or dumber. It just shows us that people in different countries are different. And now let me tell you about the biggest difference between Russia and America. For me, a person who lived in Russia for 7.5 years, who still goes back to Russia twice a year, who has lots of Russian friends, but who is also an American, born to American parents. I've been an American citizen all my life, lots of American friends, I've lived in many parts of the United States. I can tell you that the biggest difference between these two groups of people, Russians and Americans, is national identity. That's right. How these people see themselves. We could say that this is related to race, but let's call it national identity because this is closer to what we're talking about. Let's take United States, for example. What does it take to be an American? What do you need to do? You need to be able to speak English. Wait, No, there are lots of people who don't speak English and are still American. What about color of skin? There are lots of different people with different colors of skin who are American. But when you're walking down the street and you see a person on the street and you say, "Where's he from?" Can you say that he's from America? You can say this about any person with any color of skin. He might not even speak English, and you will probably automatically think that he's American. Because when you meet a person in America, you usually think he's American. You don't usually think he's an immigrant. Okay, maybe if he doesn't speak English, you might start thinking he's from somewhere else. But if you just see him from a distance, you usually think, okay, he's American. Or you don't even think about this. You don't question this. You just think he's a person. Like we talked about earlier with gender roles. But in Russia, it's very clear who is Russian and who is not Russian. So for example, a person who was not born in Russia, not born to Russian parents, and doesn't have a typical Russian appearance, a lot of people will say that he's not Russian, even if he speaks Russian perfectly and moved to Russia at a young age. Even if he holds a Russian passport, people might say he's not Russian. In fact, in Russia, there are two different words that people use to describe Russian people. There's Ruski and Российский. Ruski means the nation, the race of Russians. So, to be in this category, you need to look Russian. And Российский is about being a citizen of the country. So there are many different people who look very different and do different things and have different cultures who are categorized into this group. But how does this difference really affect the way that Americans and Russians behave and think? Well, let's say the same idea in a different way first. The American concept of national identity is all-inclusive. That means that anywhere, any person in the world could be American because there's no limit to color of skin, language spoken, religion followed. There are really no limits. However, the Russian concept of national identity is exclusive. Only people who have certain appearance and certain abilities will be considered part of this group. The Russian idea of national identity is very similar to other countries. There are specific criteria that need to be met for a person to be Italian, for a person to be German. When we see someone who looks like they're from Africa, we don't say, he's Italian. We don't say, he's Russian. We don't think this even in our heads. We automatically exclude him from this group, or at least people from those countries do this. But American people tend to include all people. So if we see someone who looks like he's from Brazil, we can say, he's American. If we see someone who looks like he's from Africa, we say, he's American. If we see someone who looks like he's from Russia, we say, he's American. And let me tell you why this concept and this idea of how Americans view national identity is one of the most dangerous ideas in the world. Because when anybody in the world could be American, this means that we try to apply our standards to all people. All people can fit into our group, so they should be in our group. This is much different from what other countries do, where they say, we have limits, we have standards, in order to be in our group, you need to meet these requirements. And that means that if they expand their territory to another area, those people will clearly not be Russian at the beginning and will need to assimilate. And sure, in the United States we have the idea of assimilation, but we stretch our understanding of who is American and who is not. There are not strict limits and strict standards. Maybe to be a citizen of the country, but not to be what we call an American. So I hope that helps you understand the differences between American people and Russian people. I only had a short time to talk about it, and really we could go on and on about these topics forever. So if you have any more questions about it, feel free to write a comment down below the video. I know that some people are very sensitive towards some of these topics, and if you felt like you were offended in my presentation of this information, go grab a tissue. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, press like on this video, and tune in for the next one.